y'all, it's Hope at Crafty Hope, and welcome as I am sharing with you another set of 3 of my mini assemblage 100s for the 100-day project. This is one of the 200-day projects I've set out for myself this year. And this is, last year I did Assemblage 100, which were larger projects, but I decided I wanted to do these small snippets of projects and bring little bits of things that I really enjoy working with together and make mini assemblages. So for this one, this is number 57. You can see I started with some little dried flowers I had picked in my yard, and that is some kind of book paper with gesso on it. And I really thought when I picked those flowers I was going to use them separately, but they looked so cute bundled together as the 3 of them that I was like, you know what, we're going to go ahead and use all 3 of them. So I put them stacked on each other and then was like, you know what, I want a button. So I sorted through a jar of colorful buttons that I have, and looking for something. I wasn't sure what, and for some reason this yellow button called out to me. So I was like, okay, we're going to use it. And apparently it had come straight off a button card because it still had the little metal like staples that hold it onto a button card. I had to cut those out. And then I've got this bit of a tablecloth. Excuse me, that I am tearing down just slightly larger than that piece of book paper. So I've got those stacked there, and there's a lot of fiddling with the placement of these 3 little flowers that, you know, it doesn't really matter in the end, but to me, it was something. So I just thought they looked so precious together. I wanted to add a little bit of movement on this paper, so I've got my chunky pencil here that I did just a tad bit of scribbling and blurred it with my finger. And then I think I'm going to, ink the edges of this with some brown distress ink. This is probably walnut stain, possibly a combination of walnut stain and tea dye. But that helps give a little bit of definition around the outside of that paper, especially on that aged tablecloth there. So this is pretty much going to be my little stack, but I knew I wanted something else, so I've dipped into my bucket of vintage photos and found this little girl who seemed absolutely perfect. There is a bit of a red stain. I don't know if you can see it here at the top of it, like some ink got on it, and I didn't like that. So I'm just going to tear the very top edge of that, which is fine because this is a little girl. Her head doesn't come to the top of the frame anyway. So this is going to be my little stack. I knew I wanted to add a bit of embroidery floss in here in a similar color as that yellow button, so I pulled out several yellow flosses to see what went with that button, and I picked this one. So I'm going to go ahead and put that floss on a needle and tie a knot. I did that off camera there. And so I am trying to decide what the front and the back of that is and stick this down. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pull in my Fabri-Tac and put that straight on to my bit of book paper there and stick it on that tablecloth piece just to get that to start drying and get everything secure there. And then I think I'll pull, let me see if I do it. I think I'll pull in the fabric. I'm trying to get that little bit of lace that hangs off the bottom to lay flat. I really should iron these pieces, but whatever. So I'll use the Fabri-Tac again and put a little dollop right on my book paper to tack down my flowers. Now, more than anything, this just helps them stay steady. I think they end up getting tied down a little bit more when I add in the embroidery floss here in a minute with the button. But I think I'm going to go ahead and, no, maybe I will. I'm going to use E6000 on the button to get it because it's a little bit heftier than the rest of those materials. So yeah, I go through my adhesives. I'll bring in another one here in a minute. I have different adhesives for different materials as you should. So all right, so I'm going to just get that there. I'm going to grab the, what am I going to use? It's some Aleene's what's it called? Tacky glue that I will use to glue down my little girl. So I'm using paper clips here, not paper clips, clothespins to act as a clamp to hold things together while the glue dries. So that was my tacky glue there that I'm just sliding in. I put it on the back of that photo there, and I kind of slid her a little bit under the button, and then I'll use those clothespins as well to hold her down while all of this has a little bit of drying time. Now, I didn't step away for very long because all of these glues dry pretty quickly. And since that is all dry, I've got my needle with my thread on it, and I'm pre-poking a hole in the button so I can find it on the back. And then I am just doing like the X. Since this is a 4-hole button, I'm making sure I make the X on it. And in the process, I'm kind of going around the stems of these dried flowers so that they are also secured on there. Now, I don't want to pull too tight because they are dried flowers and they could crumble just a little bit. So I don't want it to be so tight that it forces them to collapse. All right, so once I get that on there, I start looking at this, and there is a lot of looking at this because I decide I'm going to go ahead and bring that yellow on the other side of this little assemblage and make some French knots. Now, if you saw the reveal of this assemblage on Instagram, where you can definitely find me in I'm not sharing all of my mini assemblages here on YouTube. That's just too much for an everyday thing, but the ones that either people well liked or asked about or had a lot of interest in, I am sharing those. So anyway, but if you saw that over there, you saw that, I think it's right here. Yeah, maybe it's not that one. No, maybe it is. My French knot there gets wonky, and I don't even know how I did it. And so since it was like poking up, I'm sure I could have pulled that thread back through, but I was like, you know what, we're gonna let this be a little bit messy. So I am gonna tack down the part that's sticking up a little just by stitching not a knot, but putting a stitch over it, trying to get it to lay a little bit more flat. But I'll add a few more French knots in here. Some of them will be nice, neat French knots, and some of them I purposefully mess up so that that one's not such an eyesore on its own. So, let me see. So to make a French knot, you come up through your substrate, your fabric, your paper, whatever it is you're using. You're going to wrap your thread around your needle one or more times and then go back into your substrate in a different area, very close to that first area, and pull your needle through, and that just makes a French knot. So up, around your needle, back in, hold your thread kind of tight against the needle, and then pull it back through. Now, what I think I was doing to make those wonky ones, because this is about where it starts to bother me, maybe it isn't this one because that was a pretty solid French knot there, is I start flipping the thread around its orientation from where I pull it through. And I think that's how I made these French knots, these wonky ones. So I think this is going to be one of them. So, see how I'm kind of just moving that around, and it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't like the fluid movement. And so there's a bit of a wonky French knot. Yeah. So I decide I need another one of them. I think I poked myself there. And I may have poked myself again. I was trying so hard to be like lackadaisical about it so I could do something messy. And yeah, so there's another one of them. And I think I'm going to bring, I don't remember how many French knots I end up putting on here, but I mean, the purpose of this in general was to bring that yellow from that right side of the assemblage, I don't know what to call these, over to the left side a little bit. So here I'm making just a regular French knot, and I'm trying not to wrap the ends of the thread around my flowers so that I end up pulling them and breaking them also. So I'm adding a couple more, and then I'll finish up just by tying the thread off on the back, and I think that will complete this one. It really was super simple just to bring these things that I really love all together, you know, botanicals or nature elements, buttons, old photos, aged fabrics, all of these little things, bringing them all together is a lot of what this 100-day project is about for me. So I'm going to give you a few looks of this project number 57 here in just a second, and we'll move on to project number 60. once I get all this tied up. Let's see how gentle I'm trying to be. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that off, put my needle up, and have a look at this. And here is project 60. So I started with, you'll see them there, some plastic white rings that were in my stash. So I'm not sure what these are for. I think they come out of like the sewing section, but I'm not really sure what they're for. They're not stitch markers or something. And I was wrapping embroidery floss around them to make necklaces, but I don't do that anymore. But I also had these alcohol inks I had picked up at Hobby Lobby on clearance and was like, you know what, let's get them out of the package. Let's see what colors I've got. Let's use them. And I'm going to color these plastic rings, whatever they are. So this set of the alcohol inks are blues and greens, and then there's like a gold alloy. And these are colors I really love. So that's part of the reason I went ahead and splurged. Even though these were on clearance, they were still, I don't know. And I found out later that because I thought I only had one of the colors that were on there, I think I ended up having 3 of the colors. So there's some duplicates, but I don't mind. Like I said, these are colors I like. I'm working on a nonstick craft sheet just to make sure these alcohol inks don't get all over my desk, to make sure they're easier to clean up. But let's see, the first color I put down I think was cobalt, maybe. This one I believe is pistachio. And I think the last one I'm going to end up using maybe turquoise. But I'm finding that because the alcohol inks ends up going down onto the craft sheet and getting on the back sides are getting real muddied. So you can see I flipped that one over and there's just nothing to it. So I'm going to add a little bit more of that darker blue. Like I said, I think that's cobalt. I'm not sure. I'm just playing, really. I wasn't sure how these would come out. I don't think that's, maybe that's more of that pistachio. And then there's this one, which I said I think it might be turquoise, but I'm not sure. I was really just playing with these inks, seeing what would happen, seeing if these plastic rings would in fact dye. So I'm letting them dry, and I'm going to, tap a little more color on them, and I'll push them off to the side and walk away and let them dry for a while before I come back. So I'm going to try to clean up some of that ink. So I come back and they are perfectly dry and they're really cool looking, y'all. So I was like, okay, what can I work with this? And I found some rusted fabric I have. I believe this is one of those flour sack towels from the Dollar Tree that I like. I haven't seen them in a while, but I've always got my eye out for them. So I'm going to tear this down a bit smaller. I was really liking the rings I got from some big washers on these, and I thought that would be really neat to have these rings with those little rings that I've got going on. So I've got at least portion of one of those rings. And this is some seam binding that I had cut when I had my Crafty Hopes prompt project, and I had cut down some seam binding and it just didn't work in, or it was too long, or I don't even remember at this point. But I thought it would be nice on here. And then there's a strip of dictionary paper that just happened to be on my desk. Y'all, the things that are on my desk, that keeps me supplied in these 100-day projects. I will admit the rings and some of the other things that I've been trying to work in lately. I've got a set of little like hardware store drawers that they're small drawers that normally like nuts and bolts and screws would be in. But I've got all kinds of little jewelry components and things I've found and all of that, and I've been trying to work through those and pull out things, and that's where the rings came from, and that's where the next main component for my next number 64 we'll watch in a second came from. So I used the Fabri-Tac again to glue down that rusty fabric onto the dictionary paper. And I'm futzing with things and trying to make decisions, and I think I'll move the rings around here again in a second, trying to decide where I want them in relation to that big ring. And yeah, so I'm finally like, just glue the Fabri-Tac down and let's get to it. So, because I could have futz. I do this all the time. I futz, and I'm like, you know what? When it comes down to it, when I pull that glue out, I'm going to stick it down somewhere, and that's where it's going to be. And I just couldn't get this balance with that big ring. And I end up deciding I think that I like them all better on the left to get, I don't know, it felt more balanced that way. So that's where I'll end up putting them down. I'll pull out, see, look at me trying to futz it. Maybe I'll put one in the center and then these two. It was just, oh my goodness. So I've got my E6000 there and a toothpick, and I'm going to do the best I can to get that E6000 on those rings without having it show up too much on the front. I don't like that glue seeping through, so I'll use the other end of the toothpick to kind of pick up some of that glue. I think that's one of the things I like about the E6000 is because it's more gel. And as it dries, it doesn't dry permanent. As it dries, it just gets tackier and tackier until it cures. And with that tackiness, you can kind of scrape up some of the excess. So that's what I like to do with the toothpick. So I'm getting these 3 rings down. And this one, there wasn't much more to it. I kept this one really simple, but I wanted to show you just some of the elements that I kind of brought together in this. I will futz around deciding I need something. So I've got this tea bag that I pull out, and I kind of like the way that it's transparent over the top of the rust paper. So I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, not my sewing machine, my typewriter. Jeez. And type up the phrase, "A dream is a wish your heart makes." And then I use a little bit of water to go around that to make it easier to just tear it out lightly, because I do want the frayed edges of this to feel a little more organic. And yeah, I'm going to put that on there. I decide to use a little bit of matte gel medium to do it because I know that'll be, I don't know, secure, but at the same time super clear and matte. So I'll put it straight on to my fabric there and stick my tea bag on there. And that's about it for this one. Super simple, super easy. I'm going to let this dry, and again, just like the other, I'm going to give you a couple of looks at it. And our last one's even, I think it's even quicker and easier. So these don't have to be complicated. Just use what you've got. This last one is going to be number 64, and you can see from my little drawers I pulled out, that's a zipper pull just off, who knows, a jacket or who knows. And I decided I really liked those holes at the top of the bottom, and I could put words in them, but I realized pretty quickly going through, unless I used maybe dictionary text, which is super tiny, that a regular novel was going to be really hard to get the words to show. It had to be something super tiny. So I end up coming up with a phrase, which is "do not ask," and I find all those words in a couple pages from the same one novel that I tear pages from all the time. So I've got it, I think the bottom one centered over the ask, and I'm going to use a pen to draw around this so I can be sure that I'm laying this zipper pull back exactly down where I want it, and also gives me an idea where I want the top word, the do. So I'm circling it, kind of getting an idea of where it is, and I'm holding that pen like I'm going to use the pen again, but I end up not. So, and I'm just trying to get an idea of where I want to put that do. So I'm going to cut it out as close as possible around the letters of the word. And I think I just used my Oohoo glue stick. All of these, I've told y'all already that all of these assemblages are about the adhesives. That it's, if I just am gluing paper to paper, there's no reason not to use just a glue stick. All right, so I've got those centered pretty well. My line for my pen shows up a little bit, but I don't mind that so much because it's black, just like that zipper pull. So it kind of almost adds a bit of a shadow to it. And in I come with my toothpick and my E6000, and I'm going to spread that. I'm trying to make sure that I get the E6000 on some of the raised edges of that zipper pull, because that's what's going to touch the paper. So it's, if I just put it in the recessed parts, it'll never touch the paper. It will glue. So I've got that stuck down just like that, and I'm trying to find my knot word. And I think I ended up having to take it out because where I had it in the book, part of it had gotten cut in some of this futzing. So I found the word cannot and just cut the knot out. You'll see that in a second. See, here's me trying to get some of that glue out, get things moved right where they need to be before that E6000 dries completely. All right, so now I'm looking for the knot, and I find, I realized that I can't use the one that I thought I was going to use. I'm having to look through the whole page. Sorry I didn't cut this out, but I found the cannot, and I'm going to do what I can to cut that down super small. Y'all, I'm so bad when it comes to cutting things out of book pages like this. I have so many like book pages with just like big sections taken out of them that are just flopping around everywhere, and I end up ruining them because I end up like trying to pull them out to use them again and tearing the whole thing. I've got to find a better method of storing these. Since I know that the E6000 will be immediately tacky and I'm gluing, to the metal and paper, I decided to go with the Fabri-Tac. What did I say? Did I say E6000? Maybe. I don't know. I'm using Fabri-Tac because it dries quickly and knew it would immediately stick to those two surfaces. So yeah, Fabri-Tac for there. So there's my do not ask. And then I've come in with some more of that rusty fabric. I'm not sure that this is the exact same piece I used before. Very possibly, but you see it didn't have the rings on it. And I'm tearing it down slightly larger than my zipper pull there. And then I've got a piece of ledger paper that I have altered in a workshop. I think it was the Amy Bishop Magpie Journal workshop, I think is what it was. I altered this piece of ledger paper, but it's perfectly like chaotic, and then I put that bit of fabric on top with the do not ask on it. And y'all, I'm really just going to glue these pieces together. So the Fabri-Tac will go onto that ledger paper, and I'll put the fabric right into it. And then I think do I use the E6000 to glue that down? I think I do. I'm not positive. Yeah. So, and then after that, this one's done. Like I said, this one was super easy. It's just a couple of little elements: a book page, a zipper pull, fabric, and a piece of paper. Oh gosh, I completely forgot one of my favorite parts. Y'all, some embroidery floss is also in this. What am I thinking? So I had this scrap of some like maroon colored embroidery floss sitting on my desk. So I tied a knot on it, and I'm going to make some tiny X's. So 3 tiny X's across the top of the fabric up there. And then I will stop for a minute because I really, really liked the X's across the top, and I thought I don't need to add any more. It's fine. This is just enough of a statement, but I end up changing my mind and saying, okay, I'll add 3 at the bottom and balance it out. For some reason, from here, was it this one? Well, somewhere right in here, I start doing these assemblages that have more of like a straight up middle of the assemblage focal, which hasn't really been my jam for most of this project. I've had a lot of things off-centered and with several little pieces as part of the assemblage instead of one main focal, but this one for sure needed to be like right there center and focal. And I do a lot more what's the word, symmetrical, I think is what I'm thinking of, like a lot more that feel a bit more symmetrical than like off-centered. So, and this is definitely one of those. Alright guys, this is the last one. If you like this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe. If there are any more of these assemblages, 65 and on, let me know as soon as possible. If you want to see how they come together, you can see all of those over on Instagram. I'm at Crafty Hope over there. So if you see one that you would like to see the process video for, definitely let me know, because I try not to hold on to the videos for too long because they clog up my computer to have all of those files. So all right, that is going to be it. I will tie this one off here in just a second, and I appreciate that you took the time to come and watch these. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see y'all very soon. Bye.